So in Love is Blind, there's always one or two troublemakers when you're in the pods, whether it be in the men's quarters or the women's quarters. But in Love is Blind France, there's definitely one troublemaker, and I'm going to give you a hint as to who it is right now. Teddy, roll the tape.
Leclerc! Charles Leclerc!
What's going on, you guys? James here with another real recap and review for Love is Blind France. Yes, we've been covering Love is Blind on this channel so much, whether it be US or now UK, but I heard from you all that you wanted me to cover France, so I'm obliging, okay? We're gonna do it. We're diving all into the spoilers and some of my spoiler-free thoughts, so time codes will be below, but let me tell y'all something, yeah. Listen, the French are very, romantic people, but listen, they can get a little scrappy sometimes, you know what I mean? Oh my goodness, listen. All I know is you guys better sit down, get comfortable, pass the escargot, seriously, because I'll eat it, and get subscribed to the channel, because we're not just doing it for week 1. We're going to be covering Love is Blind France for week 2, which is next week, September 17th. That's episodes 5 through 7. Week 3, episodes 8 through 9, which is September 24th, and the reunion episode, episode 10, October 1st. At least, I think it's the reunion episode. It might just be the final week, but this is based on what I know. So guys, again, get subscribed to the channel, get comfortable, and get ready. And I need to know in the comments, what in the world do you think of how this week ended? Because I thought everything was going to be great. They're going to Morocco. It's beautiful. I was wrong. Very, very wrong. Love is Blind France is hosted by Teddy Reiner and Luthna Plokos. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And again, it's comprised of 10 episodes this season. It's the first season they've done it. And, well, I guess this is a good time to talk about my spoiler-free thoughts. Because, again, it's not that I don't think this was like a great first week. But in my opinion, I found this to be pleasant. At least sometimes. The drama, not so much. But it was romantic, and I don't know. I love the diversity in age ranges. So let's just start right at the top with my positive takeaways. They definitely don't have as much filler inside of the pods compared to the United States version of Love is Blind. And I think that's because the contestants were above 30 years old for the most part. It showcases a huge diversity, not just in terms of ages, but also in maturity levels, and I do like the diversity regardless on display. It felt elegant to a degree. I'm like, okay, this feels different. Even though it's in the Love is Blind franchise, it does feel different enough. So I like that. And also, I'm going to be honest, everyone was dressed to the nines. I mean, there were no sweatpants, there was no tank top, none of that. It was like, I'm coming in my Gucci suit and I got my Chanel earrings. And let France come through, okay? My goodness. And if you're here just for the drama, there was a lot of that, at least outside of the pods, and it happened quite quickly. Almost too quickly, though, and that might be the case of the editing, which is one of the negatives we'll get into, but it almost felt like some of these couples, their moments in the pods were pointless because everything outside of the pods materialized quickly or dematerialized. I mean, it just, the ship was sunk. That's probably my biggest negative takeaway for week 1, which is the editing. It was just not very good to me, and it felt like there were too many abrupt cuts at times and poor transitions that felt rigid in between scenes. It didn't flow too well for me. I mean, UK Season 2 flowed a lot better in my opinion, but sometimes I ask myself, did I miss a scene here? How did they get from point A to point D? You know, what happened? So sometimes, again, I just felt like in the pods I was thinking, okay, I'm getting the vibes that maybe this was edited poorly in post-production. But overall, it was a solid week 1 of a new season and location for Love is Blind. Now, I won't tell you it was great, but week 2 might be even better, especially based on that cliffhanger ending that we got with week 1. There were contestants I was rooting for, there were some couples that I thought, oh, that works, and then there was a couple I thought should have worked and didn't. That was interesting to me. So I guess this is maybe a good time to get into all of my spoiler-filled thoughts, you guys. So if you don't want to miss out and maybe you aren't done with week 1 of Love is Blind France, save this video to your watch later list, subscribe to the channel, tap on the bell for next week's recap as well, and like this video, y'all. And then come back and tell me which contestant was your favorite. If anyone says Kim, I'm gonna... No. Or Sarah. Actually, no. If anyone says Sarah, I'm gonna question you guys. Alrighty, so let's get into my spoiler-filled recap and review right now, you guys. We're going to start with our In the Pods moments. I'm telling you, stuff in the pods happen, and sometimes I'm thinking this is pointless because the men's and women's living quarters weren't very good until like the final episode, I want to say, of this week. And then, or actually it was episode 3. But then otherwise, it was just kind of pointless in the men's and women's living quarters. So we're just going to get into the pods here. They waste zero time, you guys, before going from the men's living quarters and the women's living quarters into the pods. Like, there was like no build up. Now, the music was actually pretty catchy the entire week until they got into the English sounding tracks, and I was not okay with that. I thought the English music here, I'm like, no, go back to the French stuff, or back to everything except for English music here, because it's just not working well for me. But we get introduced to Chloe first, and she wasted no time during her first dates. She even asked the question, do you want to be my boyfriend or not? Isn't that like a song almost? Do you want to be my lover? Isn't that like... Oh, gosh, I don't know. I'm not going to try to sing. But the intros to one another did feel pretty elegant. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, they were sitting down and they're like, hello, what is it in French? Is it comment ça va? Is that what it is? I hope I got it right. I watched 4 hours of this season. I should pick up some French. Oui. But it did sound nice. And they were getting it to some other contestants like Alexandre. And then I thought, oh, I know what they're doing. They're going to put Chloe and Alexandre in the same pod together. And they did. So let's get on to our very first connection here, and that is Chloe and Alexandre. I'm telling y'all, a lot of these contestants had some past trauma, and they were trauma bonding. Chloe said her past relationships have been up and down, and there's more where that came from, but it seems like Chloe might have some trust issues based on past relationships as well. So Alexandre's like, yo, I got some stuff in my past too, where he had to forgive his ex-girlfriend for cheating on him with one of his friends because he wasn't around a lot due to work. Ooh, mamma mia, that's a lot, okay? But Alexandre, after that date, gets in the men's quarters and calls Chloe his wife right away. I was waiting for one of the producers to be like, not yet, dog. Like, y'all aren't actually, engaged yet. But Chloe felt similarly because she goes into the women's quarters and then she feels good enough to where she comes back to the pods with Alexandre and starts singing Alicia Keys's If It Ain't You. Wow. Then we get introduced to Tatiana, and she tells the guys her age. She's 39 years old, and one was literally stopped in his tracks. And to that gentleman, I say you're an ageist. Come on. It wasn't like he was thinking, oh, 39, okay. He was literally thinking, how do I get out of this pod? Son of a gun. But she does reveal that she has one child and she is divorced. So that is a part of her story here. And we're going to get into Tatiana's first real date with a man here, and that is with Thomas. I almost said Tomas. It's not Tomas, but it's Thomas. Tatiana reveals to Thomas, hey, I have a kid. And Thomas is like, yo, I got a daughter. And they're both like, oh, we have children. Tatiana is immediately overjoyed. And I'm guessing it's because she can finally relate to somebody in this experiment. And I thought Tatiana seemed really nice at first. To be honest, I actually am a fan of hers during week 1. I think she's a nice person. She's got a lot to play for because she's trying to build another life and also support her child. So I liked it. Thomas was definitely more mild-mannered than she was, though, but they do have a lot in common, even growing up in the same town, apparently. I forgot the name of the town, but y'all tell me and remind me in the comments. Thomas does tell Tatiana about her connection with Kim, though, and I thought that was probably not great, and Tatiana took it to heart. Tatiana immediately gets sad because she says, listen, I need to know that I'm the only one for my man. And Thomas asks, well, are you going to fight for me? This was probably the most questionable Thomas moment in the pods because I'm thinking, you don't ask a woman that question, are you going to fight for me? That, to me, seems like you're not taking the initiative as the man here. So Tatiana basically in her testimonial interview says, no, I'm not going to fight for you. Ain't that your role? So immediately after that, I thought, okay, the connection is probably over, but we're going to revisit them soon. Let's move on to Charles and Julie, or as he said it, Charles. Is that how he said it? Like Charles Leclerc, But Charles reveals that he lost his mom at a young age, and his story is really sad, honestly, you guys. And his dad shortly afterwards abandoned him, and I'm like, bro, so he had to live on his own at 17 years old, and he was hoping at 18 he'd get a call from his dad, but that call never came. Yeah, that's sad, yo. Julie reveals that, well, hey, I don't speak to my mother. We have an estranged relationship as well. So a lot of that, again, trauma bonding. We'll get back to Charles and Julie soon. Let's move on to Charles and Sarah, which is now the start of our first love triangle in Love is Blind France. And let me tell you, Love is Blind France was not shy in terms of the amount of love triangles. I mean, like, mamma mia. So Charles begins to ask Sarah about the physical side of relationships, and Sarah says, listen, I'm Muslim, and I'm not going to talk about that on camera. She didn't say she wouldn't talk about it off camera. It's just she was trying to just wait and pump the brakes a little bit. So Charles, he does respect it, but it made Sarah feel really awkward. The thing is, you would think, yeah, that's okay, that's done. They're done. But no, Charles and Sarah say they're each other's number one, and I'm thinking, how? Next up, we get introduced to Kim, a contestant whose father is from Sicily, and I gotta say, let's go Sicily love. Alrighty, I'm with it, okay? And then she recognizes that, listen, I might be demanding here because I'm glad you said it. There's a montage of her, and she definitely is talking about how demanding she is in a relationship, and let me tell you, that is correct. You are very demanding, Kim. But she knows what she wants, but will she want Clement? Kim and Clement are one of the early connections for Kim, and in the pods, Clement talks about his interest in geopolitics, philosophy, and then hits Kim with a very weird question. So if you're talking about like your academic side of things and like I'm into politics, this and that, he hits her with this, so what are you wearing? I'm like, oh, right, the French don't waste time. Bruh, slow your roll. But she obliges, and she says I'm wearing like a full Levi's denim like outfit here. It's just interesting, but they start talking about the level of physicality in a relationship, and I just felt like it didn't work for me. Like they didn't mesh, so something was off about both of them. Now we're going to transition to Kim and Thomas, and it's weird because I thought at this point, okay, Thomas, maybe him and Tatiana, they're salvaging their relationship somehow behind the scenes, but nope, there's no saving that. I just felt immediately, my first note is, why do I feel like Thomas is going to break Tatiana's heart? Yep, that pretty much happens. Kim tells Thomas that, hey, I clicked with Clement, but I really like you. So here we go, guys. Another love triangle. Why don't they just name it Love is Triangle, France? Thomas then opens up to Kim about his parents and family trauma, and Kim begins to cry. And what's cool is that this kind of knocked a wall down for Kim, and Kim begins to open up and get vulnerable with Thomas too. As weird as it sounds, at this point, I kind of liked them together. I just didn't know if at this point they'd work outside the pods, but in the pods, yeah, I kind of like them. Thomas then reveals Tatiana and Kim are on the same level for him, so it's a tie ball game, you guys. Back in the women's quarters, Tatiana says that her future husband is an architect. It doesn't say Thomas, but she's so confident, you know? So she says, yeah, my future husband's an architect, and Kim turns around immediately thinking, excuse me? Thomas is an architect. Well, time to break down that house. And, well, it becomes a battle at this point. So we're going to leave this triangle and get into, yes, another love triangle. I'm not joking. We got Jonathan and Cynthia. And it's an early connection for them both. No real notes to take away from. But this next connection between Cynthia and Mady, I'm thinking this might go the distance. Boy, was I wrong. Cynthia says that she's a Christian, which is really cool to hear. And Mady says, well, God's a pillar in my life. And I thought, okay. They both have this extended conversation about basically needing to be equally yoked in a relationship. And I thought, this is pretty cool. Okay, this can go somewhere. I just wish that they had said the name of Jesus in this conversation. Even though I believe Cynthia has a relationship with Jesus, it would have been nice to hear his name, right? But it is pretty cool to see this sort of conversation happening in Love is Blind regardless. It's been happening more and more lately, which I love. But yeah, we'll revisit them. Now time to get back to Julie and Charles. And let me tell you guys something. Charles is a little freaky, okay? I'm not just talking about, oh, he's scary. I'm talking about he's a freak, okay? My goodness, he talks a lot about intercourse, this guy. But Julie's not afraid to match his energy. They are trading blows back to back, and they're talking all about things. So I'm thinking, oh boy, this is not good. And we'll talk about why it's not good later on. Just, you need to have a more solid foundation than that. Alrighty, time for Kim and Tatiana's conversation back in the women's quarters. After Thomas tells Tatiana he's between two girls, Tatiana's thinking, okay, well, I know what I gotta do. I'm pulling Kim for a chat. And that was not a Love Island reference. But Tatiana and Kim have a conversation, and Kim says that Thomas is perfect. And I'm thinking the whole time, girl, you got to take it much slower than that. Tatiana tells Kim, though, that Thomas asked, hey, would you fight for me? And that made Kim question, I guess, Thomas's intentions, because it almost feels like Thomas is playing both sides of the field, which honestly is kind of like the point of Love is Blind in a way. Is it not, guys? They just play both sides. They're two different connections. It's an individual experience, as someone said this season. But yeah, at this moment, I'm thinking things are not so good in paradise for Charles. Or Thomas. Sorry. Not good for Charles later, though. But Thomas, yeah. So we immediately get into another conversation with Tatiana and Thomas. And during this pod date, Thomas says, listen, I'm conflicted between you and Kim. Tatiana's convinced. All right, homeboy, you made your choice. It's going to be Kim. I'm not going to interfere. And Tatiana, this was very mature of her, but I felt very sad for Tatiana. So their connection is officially over. Alrighty, well, that's one off the list. I feel bad for Tatiana. Let's get into Charles and Julie, and if they've cooled down by now, maybe they can have a civil conversation, which they do. Julie apparently shares Charles' mom's birthday, which makes Charles very happy, and then Julie opens up even more to Charles. She says that her parents separated at 11 years old, and what I liked is that they're both being very vulnerable with one another after that initial conversation of them being super physical. Julie tells Charles something, though, that made me think, well, great, that lasted for 2 seconds. Julie tells Charles that she had her morning bleep thinking about him. Girl, relax. You went from being vulnerable and getting a little bit mature in your conversations to now talking about this? Like, come on. And then it's like a whirlwind between them, because after that, dude, they talk about something serious again, and I'm thinking, what is happening? There's no consistency here. What is going on? But what Julie does open up about, I felt really bad for her. Julie said that her ex was physically abusing her. So, of course, it's hard for her to trust other people. This is going back to what Julie said at the beginning, where she said she's having trouble trusting people in relationships, especially men. So, yeah, I'm praying that Julie found her healing, because that, I can't imagine what she was going through, but that's tough. So after that very open and vulnerable moment, we get into a pod date with Sarah and Charles. Now they talk about love language, and Sarah says, well, my love language is touchy-feely. In private, Charles, you pervert. She didn't say that, but basically was thinking it, honestly. So there seems to have they seem to have a strong connection, but something is still off for me. Then Charles reveals that he's struggling with Sarah after having such a good, honest conversation with Julie. He said, Sarah, you're just not opening up. So Sarah's like, okay, I'm not opening up. Let me give you an ultimatum, all right? No, that's the other Netflix show. But she said, you're either going to choose me or not. And Charles was like, pump the brakes, kid. All right, I'll choose you next time on Love is Blind France. Like the next date. So he asked, can you give me an extension on the ultimatum? And she says yes. Oof. So we go from one awkward conversation to probably the most awkward conversation in the pods to date, which is Kim and Clement. Kim gets in the pods. She's heated after that conversation with Tatiana, is ready to tell Thomas off, and, well, she thinks Clement is Thomas. She just continues to go on and talk to Clement as Thomas and says that, I like to talk about your comments to Tatiana. Like, girl, do you not know the difference between their voices? But then she opens up and says, Thomas, Clement is my number 2. You're still my number 1. And Clement is like, you're talking to your number 2. Bye. Yeah, Clement immediately says, Kim, you lost me. So this is the end for Kim and Clement's connection. So that's 2 connections off the board, you guys. Let's move on to finally the correct person that Kim wants to talk to, which is Kim and Thomas. So Kim tells Thomas about her conversation with Tatiana, and Thomas said, I'm denying what I said to Tatiana, which is a bad look for Thomas, because you definitely asked Tatiana if she would fight for you. So the man is a liar, but we're not ready to call him a snake or a trash just yet. The editing, though, in this segment, I will say, is pretty good, even though I was kind of getting on the editing earlier. I like this side-by-side shot on screen, but I was confused. I was very confused about the timing. Not about the editing, but about the timing. This was all it apparently took for Kim to feel reassured. How many hours did they spend in the pod, or minutes? I want to know, because the editing seemed very quick, right? So Kim was like, oh my gosh, okay, so you're calling her a liar? Great, that's all I needed. I'm with you. What? So Tomas feels like he's in the clear, and Kim is ready to tell the girls something new. She goes to the women's quarters and she's like, yes, I love him. Well, that was quick. Then Thomas reveals he's ready to love Kim like no one else in his life. So, of course, Kim writes and then reads a letter to Thomas in a later pod date. And it sounds like she's proposing to him. Well, it's maybe what it leads to. So we're going to shelf their conversation for a little while longer and transition now to Jonathan and Cynthia. Let's check in on these two. And we're going to find out if Jonathan gets the short end of the stick or not. That was that was a pun for later. You'll understand it. Cynthia seems like she's very safe with Jonathan, though, especially after the conversation that she had with Mady, where, Cynthia was feeling a little like back and forth with Mady, like maybe Mady is wishy-washy. I'll explain in a little bit. But yeah, Cynthia's all in with Jonathan. Like, there is no doubt. She's like, I'm with you, homie. Jonathan does reveal that, yes, I am a Christian, which is nice to hear. But he does reveal that he doesn't pray every day, even though he tries his best. I'm going to show some grace, of course, because maybe he's just starting out on his walk with Jesus. That happens, you know what I mean? So hopefully, it works. The whole time, though, I couldn't stop thinking, this man looks like Neymar Jr. Am I wrong on that? This man looks like Neymar. But both Jonathan and Cynthia are smitten by one another, so much so that he gives Cynthia the bracelet that, his grandmother owned. And I thought that was cool. And I thought, oh my gosh, is he going to already propose? This is what it's leading up to. Yeah, we'll talk about that. So let's get to Mady and Cynthia, where basically everything it was bad. Like, this is exactly how you don't want a pod date to go. Cynthia says, hey, how would you feel about me not being okay with you having so many girlfriends, friends that are girls, and then getting phone calls? I need you to be locked in with me. And Maddie's like, it's my freedom. And Cynthia asks Mady, well, if a girl calls you at 1 a.m., you're not picking up, right? And Maddie's like, I don't know. Maybe I would. I want to keep one thing on me. Like a side piece. That's not cool, though, right? I'm joking, but like that's essentially what he was alluding to. And the whole time I'm thinking, bro, if you just don't want to set healthy boundaries, say that, So I don't know. To me, I'm just glad that Cynthia ran away. But Mady tells Cynthia, before you go, I want to let you know that your attitude towards girls that are my friends brings up trauma from my past. And Cynthia's like, all right, that doesn't affect me. You're still not setting healthy boundaries if you're going to be my husband. So this is the end for their connection. I do think Mady, of course, jumped the gun a little bit. He should have thought about things, but I think Cynthia was spared from this dude, even though she probably could have been spared from the other dude too. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's move on to another contestant we get introduced to, which is Yannick. And Yannick is getting his own montage, but he's finding it hard to find a connection. So he's falling asleep when another contestant, Lou, was talking to him in their pod date. He started yawning, he fell asleep, and he woke up and said, "Can you repeat that?" Even that sounded nice in French, though. But Yannick finally gets into a pod date with somebody who stimulates his interest, which is Cindy. They just throw us right into their connection. They already had some pod dates, it seems, because they were talking about how they've already written down so many things about each other, and Yannick is drawn to her vulnerability, apparently. Now, Cindy is older, and Cindy's got more, I guess, years of experience in her life, so she was, still keeping it kind of close to her chest, but she's like, alrighty, let me be open with Yannick. And their date went so well that Cindy gets to the women's quarters and spills her drink while walking back into the space. And I'm thinking she's excited. But Yannick isn't done playing the field. He gets into a pod date with Tatiana. And Tatiana, she's so excited. But then I'm thinking, man, Tatiana just can't get out of love triangles. So yes, here we go. I don't think we have a graphic, but if we do, cue the graphic. Another love triangle for Love is Blind France between Yannick, Cindy, and Tatiana. Oh, mamma mia. Tatiana does reveal that she's Ivorian and Italian. She's from Ivory Coast, and she has Italian blood as well. So I love that, actually. I think that's a cool mix. And yeah, they skirt away, and they get into another pod date, and this time it's Tatiana with Gallien. So I'm thinking, okay, Tatiana, Yannick, Cindy, Tatiana, Gallien. What shape has 5 sides? So Gallien wants to play a game with Tatiana and says, let's pretend we're going on a fake weekend together, and I need you to tell me which dates you'd like to do. Oh my gosh, it's so romantic. Tatiana's so smitten, like flipping her hair like, yeah, I would love to go in the mountains, And then in the next episode, they reveal Gallien is actually no longer a part of the experiment. What? Apparently, he interacted with the outside world during the experiment. Everyone is shocked in the men's and women's living quarters, and I'm thinking Tatiana can't catch a break. Poor Tatiana, my goodness. Boy, she is going through it during the pods. But apparently, Gallien, he interacted with a woman at the hotel. You're not supposed to do that. For the streets. That's where he's for the streets. So Thomas wants to tell Tatiana the truth. He tells her why Gallien left. Of course, he went to go see a girl at the hotel a couple of times, and Tatiana says, well, thank God. I mean, yeah, Tatiana's probably pretty happy she was spared from that dude. But Gallien, he said in his testimonial interview that he's got himself to blame. That's right. Deuces. Gallien is gone. So we've got connections that are broken and contestants that are leaving. It's crazy out here in these streets. So we get introduced to a new pair of contestants, and they have a pod date together. We have Sabrina and Van-My. And, they've already written notes about each other. Like, I'm telling you, there's a lot of things that we're missing in the pods, but I'm not mad at them getting through the pods quickly. Sabrina says Van-My's her favorite, her number one, and Sabrina reveals something sad. She tells Van-My that her mother has Alzheimer's and her father takes care of her mother, and they've been together for 40 years married. I think it's so beautiful. It's sad, but I like that Sabrina was open about this. And then he sends Sabrina a letter with his cologne. I mean, this man's in love. So things are vibing between those two, and it is nice to see Van-My's confidence growing with Sabrina, at least in the pods, especially because he came into this experiment really reserved. But Sabrina says, okay, while Van-My's my favorite, I want to explore another connection I had with Julien. And they're feeling each other, right, you guys? Julien says that he felt last night that he was going to leave the experiment, though, and I'm thinking, oh, he's going to say something sweet, like, I was thinking no one's here for me, but then you came along. Nope, he didn't say any of that. Julien reveals that he wanted to leave the experiment because of this guilt that was weighing on him because he was dating a girl right before he entered the pods. So Sabrina's like, great, okay, goodbye. Yeah, Sabrina said that, like, you just, like, broke my trust. It was either that or his dumb poem. God forgive me. It was a dumb poem. He said in one of his lines that stay pretty with looks or Botox or something like that. What is this man for real? Regardless, Sabrina breaks off the connection with Julien, so that's another connection off the board, and we know she's going to focus on Van-My. So let's go ahead and check in on Charles and Sarah because things are still very heated. Sarah now begins to make claims against Charles and says, hey, you're only fancying Julie because I haven't spoken about sex with you. Charles decides, oh my goodness. Okay, well, she's fighting for me. She's got passion. And you would think, like, even though she's, like, kind of fighting for Charles in a weird way, that this would make Charles kind of move to the side. But no, Charles is like, oh, you know what? You're so honest with me. I'm going to move forward with you. My jaw was on the ground. I could not believe it. And then Sarah continues to reveal her true colors, and she's looking at the camera as she's walking down the hallway and says, I won expletive. Yeah, she used an expletive. She said mother. Yeah, So I was thinking, yo, Sarah, listen, okay, this is a competition, sure, but like to that degree? Then once Sarah gets in the women's quarters, she tells another contestant she had the urge to tell Julie that you're boring as, I'm not saying the word. She's being rude, and I think she is the mean girl of this season. That's not right. But of course, Charles doesn't see any of this, so in his following pod date with Julie, he breaks it off with her. Julie is shocked. And Charles said, well, I think the reason I'm moving on with Sarah is because, Julie, you lacked modesty. And I thought you were wrong for that, homeboy. You're blaming Julie for playing along and matching your energy when you open up that can of physical worms? Come on. Charles was playing into the sexuality of their conversation, so I think that he's trash for this. But then all of a sudden, to my surprise, Charles is now conflicted because Julie's fighting for him even in this moment. So Julie's hearing all this and saying, like, you're wrong, but I still care for you. I have feelings for you. Charles, what are you going to do? You going to leave me? And Charles is like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do now. And then in a following clip after their pod date, Sarah says that she hopes Julie cries once she gets back into the women's living quarters. My goodness, Sarah. I don't even know, Sarah. You're probably not even watching this, but if you are, that is rude. Okay, that's not nice. So let's check in on the Yannick, Cindy, and Tatiana love triangle. Let's start with Cindy and Yannick's pod date. He reveals in a testimonial that he has yet to feel the spark with Cindy, but he does think it's potentially there. So he reveals to Cindy, I'm undecided. I have a spark with somebody else. And then Cindy the whole time is thinking, what is happening here? And then Yannick is like, I'm going to go take some time. I'm going to work on my special effects and hopefully figure this out. So Tatiana and Yannick have their pod date where we're hoping to learn more about Yannick's thought process here, because why are you stringing along our girl Tatiana? But Tatiana is definitely jumping the gun at the start of their date, because he asks Yannick if he has an emotional connection with Cindy or not. And Yannick says, well, I feel something with you. I'm in this date with you. And Tatiana says, I'm fed up with the experiment. And I'm thinking, okay, listen, Tatiana, this is the experiment. It's literally having multiple connections at the same time in these pods where you don't see the person for their physical looks. It's what you signed up for. So at this point, I'm thinking they're not going to work out, but their connection is not done. So let's get into Charles and Sarah, because we got to figure out what in the world is happening. We get this dramatic build up, and then there's a cliffhanger ending to episode 3, and then we get started with episode 4, and we see Charles in the pod. We don't know who's on the other side of the glass. I'm thinking it's Julie, because Charles says, I feel like, and I'm like, oh, he's about to say, I feel like I don't have a connection with you. But he actually says, I feel like I can't propose to you anymore. And I'm thinking the only contestant he's said he's going to propose to was Sarah. Oh my gosh. I mean, listen, Sarah, you lost at a game you thought you were going to win. And he says, we're over. And Sarah doesn't say anything up to the effect, you're going to need your EpiPen when you see me type of deal. But she tells Charles, don't DM me in a few days, because I'm not going to answer you, even though I know you're going to DM me. And I'm thinking, dang, will he? So Charles and Sarah's connection is also off the board. Now we're going to get back into Yannick's love triangle and start with his date with Tatiana. And I'm actually pretty shocked that they're back in the pods again after her breakdown. Yannick reveals to Tatiana, basically, I'm here for you. I'm taking you as you are. And he's saying everything except for I love you. It's weird, because in this moment, I felt like they were forcing it just to stay on the show, because Yannick is clearly checked out with Cindy, because in their following date, Yannick tells Cindy in a letter, we done. I mean, he says it more elegantly, with like French words and stuff, but he basically says like, we're done. Cindy does say, I wish you would have broke things off sooner. And I do agree that, yeah, Yannick was dragging Cindy along. So Cindy's not ready to leave without having a conversation with Tatiana. So in the women's living quarters, Cindy's venting to Tatiana. And I just know the whole time Tatiana's thinking, girl, sorry for you, but like, you're dragging it now. Cindy then starts doubting Tatiana's authenticity and almost attacks her in a way. And Tatiana, listen, she's very mature, because she is telling her like, hey, I'm not playing no games, but I understand why you're frustrated, and goes to give her a hug. And I'm thinking, dang, Tatiana, like, that is maturity. So with all of those pod dates that we saw happen, it's now time to talk about the proposals and the reveal moments, because yes, we got 6 proposals. Let's start with Chloe and Alexandre. Chloe says yes a million times yes, and Alexandre, and during the reveal moment, you would think like super pumped, and maybe he was doing like some sort of jumping jacks or something before the doors open, because you're going to tell me Alexandre couldn't tighten his tie before walking out to see his fiance? That's definitely a choice. But it was a little awkward at the beginning of their moment, even though they're quiet people anyway, it seems. They opened up a little bit more, and Alexandre dropped down on the correct knee. So good on you, homie, even though he had to like change it up a little, but nice job. And then we have Kim and Thomas, and Kim says, I do. One thing I noticed about these reveal moments, though, the music did not make this seem positively impacting. It almost felt to me that they were playing up the drama, and I was like, this is out of place. They should be in love. I mean, they are they not? I don't know. But it wasn't as romantic as I thought it would be. Kim tells Thomas that you're not what I expected, but I'm not against what you look like. So as they're having their conversations, I can tell Thomas is super reserved. And Kim, being the demanding one, right? Kim is like, I need you to be self-confident. And I need him to be like a man. So I'm thinking, oh boy, doubts are already setting in. Not great. It wasn't a smooth reveal. But let's move on to Jonathan and Cynthia. Hopefully theirs is smooth. Cynthia says yes when Jonathan proposes in the pods. And I'm thinking, this is so sweet. And she tells the girls, though, afterwards, I do have one fear. That he's shorter than me, and I want my future husband to be as tall or taller than me. And I'm thinking, Cynthia, you already real tall, so someone taller than you, but if someone's going to match your height, I get that. And then they get into the reveal moment, and the music is so bad because I know what the producers are doing. They're playing up this angle. Is he shorter? Is he as tall, or is he taller than Cynthia? This man is as tall as Leo Messi. He is much shorter than her. And I found it funny because they had like a mini pause before they hugged, and it took me out. But Cynthia reveals in a testimonial interview that she's not concerned anymore about his height. And I thought that's such a beautiful thing. If only Jonathan felt the same way about his height. But it seems like he's in love with her. He even says, Cynthia, you destabilized me. He's head over heels. I mean, it wouldn't take that long for him to get his heels over his head. But, I wish them the best, of course. So the next reveal moment we have is Sabrina and Van-My. Sabrina says yes to him, and they walk out, and that's it. I don't know. I got no notes for them again. It just felt like whatever. It was a reveal. It was fine, honestly. Now I want to move on to Charles and Julie. So Julie says yes, of course, to the proposal moment, and I found it kind of weird that she didn't even know his last name before the proposal. Did they not talk about this sort of thing? When Julie does come into the women's quarters, though, after the proposal moment, she's celebrating, and only a few girls are cheering her on. And then there's a shot of the other woman at another table with an upset look. So there's clearly division among them. You got Team Sarah, and you got Team everyone else. Yes, it shouldn't be that way, but that's how it is, and that's how it goes on these shows. During the reveal moment, the music is so darn dramatic again. Like, can we not get a romantic track here? Julie does reveal that he's not my type. I mean, he's nice, he's got a nice personality, but physically he ain't my type. So I'm thinking there's a lot of doubts during these reveals. So none of these reveals have been great, you guys. Maybe Yannick and Tatiana can save us because they're the last moment of reveals and the proposal. Of course, Tatiana says yes. And during the reveal moment, Yannick is awestruck. That man is physically in love. He is not where he wants to just hug her, hold her, and she's taking her time. Tatiana's like, okay, I'm taking it all in, and they have a little conversation. And as they're leaving, I noticed, I saw you, Yannick. You did a double take. You ain't slick. So like we always do in Love is Blind, after the proposal moments, we're going on a honeymoon with our lucky contestants, this time to Morocco. Love is Blind, US. Take notes, please. Yes, Mexico's beautiful. Let's go somewhere else, okay? Put up the money, bring them to Canada. I don't know, something. But yeah, it looked like a beautiful location. So let's check in on Charles and Julie during their early moments on their honeymoon. Julie again brings up the fact that Charles is the opposite of her type, but this time tells Charles, I'm still struggling to put you together physically, but emotionally I like you. So it reminds me of Cal from season 2 of Love is Blind UK. We got another Cal on our hands. So on night 1 together, they end up sleeping in different beds, but I actually respect Julie's decision. She says that sleeping together brings a level of intimacy and they're still getting to know one another, and also they just got engaged after not seeing each other ever. So Charles doesn't mind. He says, listen, I think this is kind of cute, but I hope it doesn't take too much time. So I'm thinking, could that be a little bit of a breaking point for him? I don't know. Then they go on a yacht date, and I just know it's cold on that boat, and it's even colder in the water, which they jump into. But hey, they do look good together, I thought. So yeah, let's move on to Sabrina and Van-My. Things are not looking up for them, I'll tell you that much. They have a spa date, and Sabrina's like, your body looks good, you work out. And Van-My's like, okay. Champagne, I'm like, you got no compliment for Sabrina? And Sabrina reveals in a testimonial interview that he never reciprocated any of the compliments that she gave to him. And that's not good. I know he's shy, he's reserved, but bro. Now time to check in with Cynthia and Jonathan. And here's the most dramatic moment of the entire week. So they're getting ready for the day and stuff like that. They're having a time and whatever. And then as they're getting ready to go out for the couple's reunion, because there was nothing of note before that, I'll be honest. It felt like there was a height issue that still lingered in Cynthia's mind, but she very quickly said, no, you know what? It doesn't matter. So she's still struggling with it, but it looks like she's over it for the most part. And Jonathan sees that Cynthia's wearing high heels, or picks out high heels. And he's like, hey, can you actually not put those on because you're already like 6'11"? And she's like, okay, I'll put on flats. And he's like, you know what? Actually, no, it's not a problem. And then he goes back on his word again because they're arguing about it. And then behind closed doors, we hear the mic that's being picked up. And Jonathan is like, actually, it was really weird that you didn't just immediately go for the flats. Like, you had to pick the high heels. And Cynthia's like, but you said it wasn't an issue. And he's like, I know what I said, but I'm like going back on what I said. And then Jonathan says, this proves you don't care about my state of mind. I'm thinking, brother, you are just insecure at this point. Come on. It's not like you just woke up 2 days ago and were short. You've been short. Like, I'm not picking on you, but I'm saying, bro, gotta be secure in who you are. And, well, they have a huge argument. And it's like a big argument to the point where they need to pull out a cigarette and smoke. I don't condone smoking. I don't like it at all. I wish it never existed. But it is Love is Blind France. I'm guessing this is like a thing. But they blurred out the cigarette. I'm starting to think, hey, producers, this is Love is Blind France. You don't think anyone watching this, your core demographic, is not ever going to see a cigarette? Like, I think it's okay. But I don't know why they blurred it out. And then eventually we got a shot of them inside, and they come in, they put their little cigarette out, and they think, you know what, it's over. Jonathan's upset. He's like grumbling, and Cynthia's like, you know what, I'm over this. They both pack their things, and they leave the experiment. So just like that, with the snap of a finger, we have a engaged couple that didn't make it to the altar. Goodbye, Cynthia and Jonathan. What? That was so fast. Maybe the fastest ever. So now it's time to check in on Kim and Thomas, where Kim reveals that she's very detail-oriented and Thomas is not. He says he likes things simple, plain. He's not looking for things like that. He doesn't even mind going in the pool, and Kim is like, I don't know what they treated that water with. But yeah, Kim does tell Thomas that she notices, hey, you're a little unsettled. You know what I mean? Like, what's going on? Lighten up a little, but also, can you be a little more confident? So they're not clicking yet. But what about Chloe and Alexandre? Okay. Well, the producers are really trying to get Chloe to say something about their first night, and Chloe is not going to budge. Chloe does reveal that motherhood was something she wasn't going to rush into, but with Alexandre, hey bro, you actually changed my mind a little bit. So while they didn't have many moments together of note, I thought that was worth mentioning because are they going to be on the same page in terms of timelines? We'll see. All right, last check-in before the couples reunion, guys. That's with Yannick and Tatiana. And Yannick is doing one of these, like, you know those guys that are like, where my hug at? You know what I mean? He is doing that with Tatiana, but he wants to be touchy-feely. Like, I think he's in love with her physically. I don't know emotionally if he's there. But he even called her a bombshell. And I'm thinking, gosh, this guy watches Love is Blind. I mean, Love Island. See, I'm even forgetting that show because it's dumb. I'd never watch it again. But this man, I think, is a little too obsessed with her physically, and Tatiana wants to take it a little bit slower. But they spend a night together, and then the morning after, Yannick in the little video says, it was a miraculous night. Does that mean what I think it means? And then in a dinner date, Tatiana does recognize and bring up to Yannick that she really loves their relationship because it displays black love. And she says black couples aren't recognized enough in France. So I like this level of transparency and vulnerability, and it was cool to hear them discuss this topic. I just wish black couples, of course, were highlighted more in France. So now it's time for our final topic, and that is the couples reunion, the first of maybe many. No, after this, they might not do another one. But Kim tells the other girls, like, hey, Charles, he's kind of a troll, right? I don't know. And then says, no, actually, he's a little elf. Girl, that is so rude. Like, why are they picking up? Is Sarah worth fighting for that much? And then, of course, some of the girls are friends with Sarah still, and they want an explanation from Charles. And that will lead into a conversation they have all together. But before that, we kind of see, you know, some of the dynamics of the couples as they're interacting. And I'm thinking, I made a note here, I don't think that any of them will make it to the altar outside of Chloe and Alexandre. I think all of them are not going to make it except for those two. I just don't see it. Cynthia and Jonathan never show up, of course, so the other contestants are like, man, well, moving on. That's exactly how they thought in their mind. So Tatiana and Thomas have a chat again because I guess Thomas wants to check in on Tatiana. I'm starting to think, hold on. I think Thomas still has feelings for Tatiana. Why didn't they end up together again? And in the midst of everyone whispering with their sidebar conversations, we get a moment with Charles getting grilled by Sarah's fan club. Sabrina tells Charles, there's a contrast between your voice and your lips. And I'm like, yeah, that's rude. What are we doing here? And then Kim, to his face, calls him a little elf, and all the girls are laughing. And I'm thinking, this is a bad look. This is super juvenile, and Thomas feels the same way, trust me. Julie then says, listen, it is none of your business what happened in the pods between Charles and I. And I'm thinking, that's right, put your foot down, Julie, there you go. And Charlie said, I'm standing on business too. Is it not clocking to you guys that I'm here for my fiance? I don't want to talk about Sarah. Who cares? This is the part of the game. And then they're all like, oh, fine. And then Kim and Sabrina just won't let it go until finally the conversation ends. But I think Kim and Sabrina are part of the Mean Girls Club. I'm so sorry. That was not okay. So we check in on Julie and Charles, and they're having a little debrief, and they're also smoking. I guess I can't be shocked. Listen, it happened earlier. It was probably bound to happen again. But yeah, they're just trying to calm down after this. And then Thomas and Kim have a chat because Kim is actually upset with Thomas because he didn't stand up for her. Thomas is like, but Kim, I'm an adult and I'm looking for an adult conversation. After he said that, I knew he was just over it. Apparently, Kim was mad that Thomas said, poor Julie, she's going through it. Is that so bad? But Thomas is really upset because as Kim continues to get on his case, he says, listen, I'm not here to listen to this BS. I'm thinking, Mamma Mia, here we go. I think he's about to leave too. I don't know. But yeah, basically, they're not having a good time together, okay? It's bad out here. And Kim said, well, you know what, Thomas? You're tactless. Tactless? Like, that is demeaning, bro. Thomas is ready to say, I'm going to take my simple self out this place. Goodbye. Man, it is bad out here. So if I had to make a guess, because that's where the episode ends and that's where week 1 ends, I think Thomas and Kim are over. Like, that connection is gone too. So we could be going from 6 engaged couples going to Morocco to 4 leaving Morocco. I don't know, guys. What do y'all think? Let me know in the comments below, because that is it for the week 1 spoiler-filled recap and review for Love is Blind France. This was so much fun. I can't wait to watch week 2. So go ahead and get subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out. Again, we're talking all about week 2 next week. Probably by Friday again, just because I'm not getting screeners for this season of Love is Blind. Maybe Netflix sees this and says, you know what? We do have screeners. That'd be cool. But regardless, I'm happy to talk about the show with you guys. So let me know in the comments again what you think of week 1. Are you team Sarah or team everybody else? Alrighty, y'all. Well, that's all I got. I'm ready to go, and now I really want escargot. I guess I'm going to Epcot. I'm gonna go. Alrighty, y'all. Well, again, thanks so much for watching. God bless you guys, and I'll catch you at the next screening.